अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to a very special episode of Hafta, which we are recording on the 7th of Feb at 10:30 in the morning, which also is News Laundry's 13th birthday. So
Yay!
happy birthday to everybody.
Happy birthday.
Yes, so News Laundry is 13 today. We have a special offer on our 13th birthday, which is that you can scan this QR code that is appearing on your screens right now. And if you're not watching this on a screen, it'll be in the show notes in whichever podcast platform you're watching it on. It is a We Are 13 offer. If you're a subscriber, you can gift our annual subscription with a flat 1,300 rupee discount to whatever friend, relative of your choice. I think it's a fantastic gift to give because then you're gifting two people. You're gifting them and you're giving us a gift on birthday
Or your
as well.
Valentine's, since Valentine is coming.
Yes, you can gift your Valentine a subscription as well.
Yes.
And if you're not a subscriber, you can gift yourself a subscription, and that's also a gift to us. This offer is only till the 9th of Feb, and it's only available to the first 100 subscribers.
So new subscribers also get 1,300
Yes,
off.
new subscribers also get 1,300 off. So yeah, let me introduce the panel today. In the studio, Anand, Vardhan.
Hello.
Our legal constitutional expert in training. Manisha, Pande.
Hello.
Raman, Kirpal.
Hello.
And joining us on video call is Mihira, Sood, who's been on Hafta before. Welcome, Mihira.
Hi,
Thank
how are you?
Very well. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good to be here.
Okay, before we continue with the discussion, I will nibhao the aupcharikta of introducing Mihira. So, Mihira Sood is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India. She's a researcher specializing in women's rights and juvenile rights as well, Mihira? Or
Yes.
and juvenile rights. And you can, in the link, there are two of her latest pieces on the Uniform Civil Code, which we shall discuss in today's Hafta. And before we go into the headlines, we'll have one more guest joining us later in the show, Govindraj, Ethiraj, who will be talking about the budget and other budget and economic related things. Manisha, let's get the headlines.
A US military aircraft carrying 104 deported Indian citizens landed in Amritsar airport this week. This triggered a fury over the manner of their return. The immigrants were handcuffed and their legs shackled during the day-long flight. The US Border Patrol chief also released a video calling them illegal aliens. And the Foreign Minister S. Shankar in the Sansad said that this is, in convention. They were shackled in keeping with past procedure, and India is engaging with the US to ensure that none of the deportees are mistreated. The opposition was basically asking them questions on why they were treated the way they were.
And of course, questions were asked in Parliament. And before we get into that, I just wanted to add that very good Mr. Jaishankar said this standard operating procedure, but each time Mr. Jaishankar gets so outraged because there's one article in a New York Times or one reporter in the US has said something, and the Minister of External Affairs of India or some of his bureaucrats decide to hold a press conference. That is also convention journalism.
I get a lot of these noises from the Western press. And if they criticize our democracy, it's not because they lack information. It is because they think they're also political players in our election. That is the reason. So I think it's time today that we disabuse them. And the best way that we do that, as I said, is by confidence. It is by confidence. It is by standing up to these kinds of attacks and criticisms and rankings and reports, because they will question everything. They will question your election system, your EVM, your election commission, as I said, even the weather.
That's not unusual. But if you think that is something that is an assault on India because Mr. Modi or government has been criticized, this is the biggest assault on Indian pride, according to me. And what was disgraceful was how most of the primetime anchors were defending this to make the government look good. Whereas I think one tweet by an opposition party is an insult to the country. But this was not an insult to the country. And if you go by today's report on the Express, even women and children were restrained.
Women and children is not convention.
So, but very brave, Modi ji, very brave, Jaishankar, SOP दिखा दिया. Journalism का भी SOP होता है. उसको भी जरा झेलना सीख लो. तो आपके लिए भी अच्छा हो जाएगा और जर्नलिज्म के लिए भी अच्छा हो जाएगा. ज्ञान कम पेला करो.
There's a rumor. If you see the trajectory of the plane, how it is entering India. So it first goes to Bombay, then comes Gujarat. So the rumor is first they wanted to, fly down at land at in Gujarat, but the
Optics
Modi
were not
government wanted it to land in some non-BJP ruled state,
Yeah.
and so that is how it landed in
No, also,
Amritsar.
it has.
Come on.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
today's-
you see.
No,
that
today's
yeah,
tweet.
yeah.
No, today's tweet also.
Yes.
Let me show you who has tweeted this. I think Pargat Singh has tweeted.
This is,
Huh?
Pargat Singh has tweeted, and I don't think this is an unreasonable,
you're giving them
speculation.
too much
Ah.
credit for
No,
managing
but Mumbai
optics.
is coming first. Gujarat
Ah.
is coming first.
No. Here's what Pargat Singh says: when Punjab demands international flights, permissions are granted only to Delhi airports to deny Punjab economic benefits. But when it comes to running a defamation narrative, US deportation flight lands in Punjab, even though most deportees are from Gujarat and Haryana. Punjab has 30, 33 from
Ah.
Gujarat, 33 from Haryana.
Yes.
Haryana.
But the flight came to Amritsar. But otherwise, international flights, no, come to
Ah.
Delhi. I mean,
They could have actually just come to Delhi and then from here you do your
yeah.
local
So I mean,
whatever.
I don't think it's at all an unreasonable theory at all.
Yes.
Polling for 70-member Delhi Vidhan Sabha was held on February 5th with a turnout of 60%. The votes will be counted as this show goes out. So actually when the show would be out, the results for the Delhi election would be out. Majority of the exit polls are, of course, predicting a BJP win. There are about 2, I think, exit pollsters who've given AAP a sweep. I thought it was also very interesting that the last 2 days, everyone from Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh were campaigning in the Delhi election. And S.J. Shankar also gave a speech that how he's embarrassed of Delhi when he goes out. He's embarrassed of the fact that this is what the national capital looks like.
No,
That
but
is a bit much. I mean, the foreign minister must have better things to do than campaign for the Delhi assembly, that glorified municipality that it is.
This election was kind of a prestige battle for the BJP. It wasn't fought on the equal footing. Okay, I personally feel, this is my opinion, it wasn't fought on the equal footing. If you see, ever since this LG was brought in, I think he is running a kind of campaign against this government. The people were put in the jail. I mean, we still don't know what the merits of. I mean, if you look at the case and the charge sheets so far that have been filed, they don't have any material evidence. Okay, but these leaders were kept behind the bar for such a long time, and the government was prevented at every step to carry out their work. So I don't know. It was such a chaotic affairs, and let the BJP come. Let us see. I mean, how many times?
Well, they have promised to fix pollution.
LG is going to come up with the he's going to come up with the press note every day. Let us see.
And if BJP comes to power, we have to, now there's just no excuse for pollution. Not that I always felt that this was a union ministry, environment
Good,
ministry
they have
task.
come. So let us.
But if they come, they better fix the Delhi
Let us
pollution.
see what kind of Ram Rajya we are
But I
going to
think
have.
we can discuss Delhi elections in the next thing. But the jailing of Kejriwal also poses a central question to AAP in the sense that when Hemant Soren goes to jail, there is a tribal identity that can be invoked and that benefits you in elections. Kejriwal doesn't, when you play the politics of school and whatever, roads and infrastructure, there's
identity politics.
That you lose out on some of the benefits of identity politics. I mean, Kejriwal going to jail was not seen as an attack by anyone. Okay, the budget was announced on February 1st. In a major policy change, the income tax exemption was increased to 12 lakh per annum. The finance minister also announced a slew of development initiatives for election-bound Bihar, including a Makhana board and new airports. Makhana is the black gold of... No, at least it should just be gold. It should be white gold. White gold of Bihar. They manufacture...
Makhane, jo snacks
Fox
makhane?
nut, yeah. It's a huge...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Fox nut.
Achha.
Which has been now repackaged as protein pops and I don't know what all, but it is sold for 300 rupees.
Diabetes patients, it's a prescribed snack.
Yeah, it's all the rage and Bihar produces it. Maximum. So are you happy with the slew of announcements for Bihar?
I have written on it.
You may. Do shabd.
Get into makhana farming.
Okay, continuing with the rupee tumble over the past few months, the rupee fell by 67 paisa to hit a record low of 87.29 against the US dollar. So this was after a day Donald Trump announced tariffs on Canada, Mexico and China.
And he withdrew the ones, delayed the ones on Canada and Mexico. He's held it for a month. But we'll have Govindraj, Ethiraj talk a little more about this later in the show.
Meanwhile, the Congress leader and leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi gave a speech in Parliament. He spoke about government's Make in India initiatives, how China has, beat us in terms of manufacturing and organizing of production, and also its military prowess. And he said the reason China is sitting inside the country is because Make in India has failed. I thought this was a very different speech that Rahul Gandhi gave from his earlier interventions. There's very little of Adani, Ambani, there's very little of Sood Boot Sarkar. And I think the first half really lays out a vision that he tried to put forward. You may agree, disagree with it, but it was very specific. He spoke on specifics of what we need to do in terms of growth, economy.
But PM response was it was also very interesting. He quoted from a book, written by a some CIA person, where the Nehru had written letters to Kennedy a couple of times, and he quoted that book, and he said that everybody should read that book.
And he also,
so I think even Prime Minister's team is working very hard to pick out such instances where he can.
But also the whole thing of attempting to put Hindu versus Nehru, that it was the Nehru family that ruined the Indian economy, or Hindu badnaam ho gaye.
But how? Nehru got a battered economy. I mean, you can't really
that doesn't.
There's no comparison. I mean, you could compare with Manmohan's government. Like, that's the best.
He took it from
I thought
the British.
Rajiv Gandhi example also that Rahul gave was interesting on information technology, that we saw, what computers could hold for us, while Atal Bihari was saying that it'll ruin. So it was a good speech, I think, overall. Days after implementation of the Uniform Civil Code in Uttarakhand, Gujarat government appointed a 5-member committee to prepare a draft UCC for the state. So Gujarat is next, I guess. 7 state governments, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Kerala, Jharkhand, Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir, passed a joint resolution demanding the withdrawal of the University Grants Commission's draft regulations. So we shall discuss this next Hafta, because it's an interesting debate that affects universities. Supreme Court questioned Tamil Nadu Governor R.N. Ravi's decision to withhold assent to some bills presented to him by state legislature, and said he seems to have adopted his own procedure. Telangana Chief Minister Revanth Reddy tabled the state's caste survey, stating that the Congress had fulfilled its election promise. You can catch South Central this week, where we discuss how superfluous this whole caste census that they've put forward is.
And Manisha is on this week.
I'm on this week, and we have a fairly lengthy discussion on this. In a press conference today, the RBI cut the repo rate 25 basis point to 6.25%. This is the first rate cut initiated by the RBI in 5 years. And he was addressing a press conference, or addressing the nation. Okay. I mean, I don't see if there was a press there. Protesters vandalized and set fire to the residence of Bangladesh's founder, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, while his daughter, deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, was giving an online speech.
And Prime
Who
Minister,
would have thought, Mujibur Rahman?
Imagine to him become
crazy.
But Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said, you cannot rewrite history. And many of the
But she's sitting in India. She must know we can.
Indian University said, hold my lassi. We will show you how it's done.
Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday to ban transgender athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports.
He's really on a trip, man. The man is, I'm convinced the man is insane. And Elon Musk is even more insane. Even if you say that policy-wise, it's not that different. Just the way they conduct themselves, man.
Yeah, it's like everyone's like out of a comic book character, man. It's just really strange. It's really strange.
Let's get to the UCC. Right, Mihira. So, your 2 pieces are titled in the Times of India, what Uttarakhand's Uniform Civil Code gets wrong. And the second is Live in Fear, Uniform Patriarchal Code. And we've already seen, while you're supposed, you can explain to our audience what this demands. And if you're living in, you have to do some arji. And there was one very funny sanitary panels, comic strip she had done. She does fantastic panels, sanitary panels. And she said, a couple go on a date and she said, have you the DigiFuck app? First you have to download the DigiFuck app before you decide to. So it's a bit of a joke. But before you tell us the technicalities and the glaring problems with the Uniform Civil Code, this itself is a misnomer, the Uniform Civil Code, because it is not, it isn't uniform. Because even if they may call it UCC, in various states and various tribal communities, you cannot have uniformity anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to tribals in Uttarakhand, for example, which is 2%, 3% of the population.
और like आर्टिकल 370 हटा दिया, लेकिन आर्टिकल 371 हटाने की नहीं औकात मोदी शाह की. So because that applies to the northeast, and they will not take that lying down. So yeah,
It also applies only to heterosexual couples. So that's again, something that detracts from it really being uniform for the whole of India or even the whole of a particular state. And then, of course, there may be situations where, I mean, the code itself contains a particularly odd, one of the many particularly odd features where it says even people ordinarily, domiciled in the state of Uttarakhand, but living elsewhere are required to do this. Where is the jurisdiction of the state of Uttarakhand to monitor living relationships in other states? And what if if the person is in a living relationship with somebody who is not from the state of Uttarakhand?
right.
How can this even be enforced? So there are many peculiarities with the law. And of course, I think the strangest aspect of it is that it is a more cumbersome registration procedure and a more cumbersome bureaucratic procedure than marriage, when it is meant to be exactly the opposite. That's the whole reason people opt for it. For whatever reason, whatever personal reasons they have to choose it, they choose it because it is something that is not legally regulated and legally scrutinized like marriage. It could be because, maybe their parents don't approve. It could be because marriage carries a religious connotation that, live-in relationships don't, and that may mean something to a couple. They may not, it may be something that they don't want to get into without, their parents and family elders' blessings. It may be because, maybe one of them, maybe they don't believe in the institution of marriage. It may be for any number of reasons. Or it may be because, our marriage laws, we take the Hindu Marriage Act, for example, that says a man can only get married when he turns 21, though a woman can get married when she's 18. So it may be that the man is younger than 21 and would prefer to be in a live-in relationship. Or it may just be that they want to kind of test the waters before getting married. Whatever the reason, the point is they want something that is less regulated and less legal than a marriage.
And if they part ways, then they have to go for an annulment of living. What is the
Of course, it's literally like saying you have to. There is no concept of a live-in relationship under this code. Basically, it's essentially like a civil union.
So when you
and both times you have to register it. You have to send a notice of termination. Both times you have to pay a fee also.
So, on the face of
You
it,
don't have to do when you're getting married, and the penalty for not registering your marriage is nothing, but the penalty for not registering a live-in relationship can be imprisonment.
wow.
SDM can summon the couple anytime they want.
Yeah. Can summon the couple.
Anytime?
Can basically has to exercise the powers of a judge, has to kind of apply his mind to an almost judicial inquiry as to whether or not there is free consent, and whether or not this is this is really.
And what is the stated objective of this? Safety for the woman. That's the stated objective.
That is the stated objective. First of all, it's really odd because the stated objective of any uniform civil code should first and foremost be to bring about a secular code that is non-religious, right? That can apply to parties across religions, whether they are in, an interfaith relationship or anything like that. Like your Special Marriage Act is somewhat, not a great model, but somewhat of a model of a secular kind of marriage bill, marriage code. This doesn't have any pretense at secularism. So that in itself really makes one wonder what is the purpose. Because throughout we've been told that the objective of a uniform civil code is to achieve this ideal of secularism and do away with personal laws.
Now, I want to move on to other aspects of the code as well. Have you read the full thing, or are you just focusing on this aspect of it?
No, I mean, I've read the full thing.
Okay.
But the full thing is broadly a reproduction of Hindu law, which was reformed once in the 1950s and once in the early 2000s to make it more women-friendly. But it is broadly a reproduction of the Hindu code, Hindu family code.
I see. Manisha, you were saying something.
So I was saying that on the face of it, the logic for this is that the live-in, registering your live-in is to basically give protection to people in a live-in relationship and give them some benefits of marriage. And countries like, say, France has something like Pax, which is a civil partnership. It's easier to break than a marriage, less complicated, but you get some of the benefits of a marriage. So, for example, if I'm in a live-in relationship, I want to kind of formalize, we get tax benefits, social security benefits, inheritance rights. So that is to tell you that, okay, you're together and you can have some benefits of what you would in a formal marriage, which makes sense, but it's optional. You can't say everyone need not opt for a civil partnership. You can go for a marriage.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I want to talk about in that context. One is that our Supreme Court, as far back as, at least the 1970s, has already recognized all these rights for live-in partners.
I see.
Inheritance rights, legitimacy of children, maintenance and alimony rights in case of a split in the relationship.
Sorry, Mihira, to cut in, is it only for a heterosexual couple? Because, I mean, something related, but it was major news in Delhi papers at least, of the Rohit Bal who died recently, who has a huge estate. He has 2 floors in Defence Colony, a factory, etc. And his partner, who is male, because Rohit was out and publicly gay, there is some tussle happening between the family and the inheritance. So
I'm not very sure of those details. To be honest, I don't know what his will.
No, but I'm saying, does it automatically apply only to heterosexual couples or same sex as well?
It's not all of these cases, how does the Supreme Court decide a particular case? A dispute is brought to it. In Rohit Bal's case, I don't know the manner of applying a precedent, the manner of applying a Supreme Court judgment to one's individual case is not as that straightforward, because there is an individual dispute. One will, try to sort it out inter alia by using these Supreme Court judgments and, showing that these rights are recognized, because nobody wants to litigate. However, the biggest weight of a Supreme Court judgment is to another court. So ordinarily you would then go to a court where you would then produce these precedents and say, look, the court.
So what you're saying is, so there is precedence of same-sex couples getting those benefits even in live-in. So Supreme Court has ruled in that fashion.
But what I'd say is that...
I say it's same as far as same-sex couples go. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any.
Sorry, my mistake. As in heterosexual couples.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Heterosexual couples. Any number of cases. There are so many cases where normally what happens is family members will say this person is not entitled. She was not his wife. And, that case drags on and ends up in the Supreme Court. There are any number of cases. I could, I think I had mentioned a few in the Times of India article, the most recent one as well. There was Badri Prasad versus Deputy Director of Consolidation. In 2010, there was a case that was decided by Justice Markande Katju, D. Velusamy versus D. Pachiamal. There are any number of cases where the court has said it doesn't matter if they were legally married or not. We have to presume that they were married.
I see.
If they have been living together for a certain length of time and they have been living in a relationship, and that's the important thing, in a relationship akin to marriage.
Right.
It's not that they are living together as roommates.
Sure.
They are holding themselves out as a married couple. Maybe they attend functions as a married couple. I mean, they are living as a couple.
Right.
And the relationship, it's not 6 months old or 1 year old. It's been, there for some time.
I see the sense of having
marriages in Europe and all. I think if you've been living together for 5 years, then it is considered a common law marriage. So maintenance, inheritance, legitimacy of children, protection, all manner of protection, not just physical protection, but also economic protection and rights of residence are recognized specifically under the Domestic Violence Act that talks about domestic relationship.
And which is not
relationship.
A relationship, not marriage. It doesn't say marriage. It says relationship.
Relationship in the nature of marriage.
Understood.
Domestic relationship includes various things under the law, and specifically it says including relationships in the nature of marriage. Now, in the nature of marriage is not marriage. And that's what the court has interpreted. That relationships in the nature of marriage are where a couple is living together as a married couple without being a married couple.
Right. I just want to go around the panel 1 second. Manisha, you finish your thought, then go to Anand.
I was just saying that I see the sense of having something between a marriage and a live-in, but it has to be simple, right? You just have a joint declaration, you go to the notary, and it should not be subject to the SDM. Clearly, if that was the goal, then Uttarakhand could have had something like this. But what we know from newspaper reports is the live-in relationships are going to be subject to scrutiny by Bajrang Dal. Who is interreligious? Muslim boy hai, Hindu girl hai, Muslim boy hai. That's the end goal. So, while we're discussing the fine aspects of law, what the Uttarakhand government wants to clearly do here is just police
get the
people who are
Bajrang
living
Dal out
together.
there.
And you have seen this in a series of cases now that have happened in Uttarakhand over the past 2 years of a girl and a boy, interfaith, maybe dating, maybe together. They're seen at a railway station, they're seen at a bus stop, and there's this whole town erupts into this whole love jihad thing. We saw that with, when Anmol had gone there. So increasingly, there is this tendency to police interfaith couples in the public view and label it love jihad. And what this law essentially wants to do is police couples. But I do see sense, even if there was a sensible government, I do see like for modern relationships to have that facility to just register yourself as a live-in and have some benefits of a marriage, but not the strict kind of getting in and getting out legal procedure of a marriage.
Have you read the code yet, or you've been too busy with your law exams, Anand? Are they over, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. Have you read it, or you have any comments specifically on the UCC, or the ones that are proposed in the other states? They haven't made those draft public yet.
No.
Okay.
Gujarat now wants to.
Okay. Right.
Have the same thing.
So have you read it? Have you read the draft? Or
Yes.
Okay, you have. Okay. So any comments you have specifically that it's different, or is it just more the same and it's more of public of political rhetoric which they want to score points on, but significantly there's no real change in day-to-day living?
No, see, political rhetoric and execution is not what concerns the law. The law will be legislated in a way that regulates the relationships. How it would be executed, what political motives would be assigned to it is a different thing. That is not the concern of lawmakers. So that is the concern of the executive. First, the entry 5 of the concurrent list empowers the state government to legislate in matters of personal law, so, as well as the state assembly, as well as the parliament. So Uttarakhand government, as the January 2023 judgment of the Supreme Court makes it clear that it is first, there was also a question of whether Uttarakhand government can go with it. So Supreme Court made it clear in January 2023 that it can go with it. So also the critical mass of the jurisprudence from the Supreme Court has been in favor of UCC. That is well known from, not only Shah Bano, but also Sharla Mudgal case in 1995, also Coentio versus Maria Ferreira more recently in 2019. Supreme Court has batted for UCC. Now the question of, there would be rough edges like the live-in relationships. Also, there are other problematic areas, because I think living relationships, marriage, and in the social ecosystem of India, marriage is a social work. Marriage is a social work in a sense that it has a social ecosystem to back it. So from families and this. Once you step outside that, then you need some, I would not say extra social, but to say some kind of impersonal protection, let us say state protection. So, we were talking about objectives. The stated objective is to see that the partner, and more specifically women, is not exploited in the live-in relationships. That's the stated objective. I think in its framing, it has rough edges. Also, the output of modernity, it may not have come with the bandwidth to accommodate it. That what are the possibilities that these relationships lend themselves to. So, more optimistically, we can see it as teething problems. And once the evolution of these provisions go into the, say, broader area of social testing on relationships, number of cases, and there would be some, Uttarakhand would now be a laboratory of it. So there would be some tragic cases where this would have very farcical results and theater of the absurd. But that's the fate of these kind of laws.
But just one quick point. Principally, it cannot be compulsory. You cannot, you can't make it compulsory for everyone. It has to be an optional thing.
Yeah, if you feel.
Yeah.
I think that the line between legislature and executive has really blurred. So to say, and in modern days, lawmaking is very arbitrary process. This is, so here what executive wants becomes the law. So the legislature, more or less follows what executive says. This is one. And second, I think the more important thing here is the intent of the way the law has been framed, that patriarchal attitude of that the women need protection, state protection.
Whether they want it or not.
If you see the crime against women in the state, so that, I think the state requires more over there instead of making, a law like this. So I think the intent is the most important thing.
No. Well, law, if there is a law that for this offense, you have to pay 500 fine. This is a law. Its intention is to punish you for an offense. But the executive is such that the police would anyway take a 1,000 rupee bribe. Now when making law, you cannot take that into account that police will take 1,000.
I think you have to take it into account. I don't think anything exists in isolation, but I'll just come back to Mihira. Just two quick points I want to make and have a question. One is, I think Uttarakhand is a laboratory, not just for UCC, it's a laboratory for a lot of other stuff. My last few visits to Uttarakhand have been alarming. The alarming level of these screens everywhere doing Jai Shri Ram and all. I grew up in Dehradun. I don't ever remember Dehradun being this place which was so over-religious and it was stuffed down our throat. Second thing is, to put it very crudely for audience my age, for whom intellectuals are too much, basically when we were in college, every party we went to, there used to be this group of assholes who no one wanted to hang out with, okay, especially girls. So what they used to do is they used to basically just pick up fights with other people and want to beat them up. RSS, Bajrang Dal are those losers who no one wants to fucking talk to. They're not going to get any action fucking anytime in their lives. So they just fucking want to go around beating up people because they will fucking get nothing. And that is actually, crudely put, the reality of many of these Sangh chief ministers. That's their mansikta unki aisi hai. Now, when it comes to UCC to criminalize this, I was listening to a podcast of Govindraj, who will be joining us later to talk about the budget and the dollar collapse. In India, 38% of all business compliances, violation of those are criminal offences. He says, which is very unique in India. Compliance violations are civil offences. You pay a penalty. Here, bloody, you get which is the ease of doing business, a bit of a joke here. Now, in that sense, the UCC, Mihira, well, it's called the Uniform Civil Code. How many offences in there are actually criminal and can get you imprisoned rather than just a fine? And is that, in your view, sensible legislation?
I would have to go through it with that from that specific point of view. I admit that's not something I've specifically looked at, and it's a very, very long code. But yes, non-registration is something that should certainly not invite criminal sanction, and it doesn't invite any penalty for non-registering a marriage also. There's no penalty. You're encouraged to register a marriage, and that's it. And the only thing that it says is if you don't register it, you can pay a small fine for registering it belatedly. But I just want to two things I want to just say in response to the discussion that was happening. One was that I don't think, as you said, we can't operate in silos. We're all aware of how laws are implemented and what all goes on in the name of implementation. And when we are drafting these laws, we need to keep in mind how can that be avoided. So when we're talking about somebody taking this much bribe or this much, we need to keep in mind how can that be avoided and put those checks and balances within the legislation itself. It cannot be that the legislation operates in a vacuum and then you're like, now you people decide, executive will decide how to implement it and judiciary will decide, what is to be done in case there is a violation. But we are not going to, draft any law that has any inbuilt checks and balances. It doesn't work that way. And it should not work that way. And the second thing is that we have to understand one very important thing. This is not just a question of registering a live-in relationship like a pro forma. There is actual permission that has to be sought.
Which can be denied.
Can say no.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So the SDM scrutiny is precisely
so
for
that is why he can summon you.
It's not an automatic process.
Achha. So now you don't have to get your parents' blessing, you have to get the SDM's blessing.
The registrar can inform your parents also.
Yeah, they can inform your parents and they can check. They can basically check your relationship.
Let me tell you what all the registrar is supposed to check. One, they are supposed to check bare legal things like, are you of age? Are you in a, related to each other by certain degrees? Like, are you living with your first cousin or something like that? Things that are prohibited under marriage laws. But two of the more problematic things, are you already married? Are you, trying to defraud your first wife or something like that? Or are you already in a registered live-in relationship and trying to live in with another? I don't know if somebody were to introduce to them the concept of polyamory, their minds would be blown, I think. But now, two things. One is that there is a difference in the age for a live-in relationship and age for marriage for women. A woman can get married at 18. But she cannot enter into a live-in relationship till she's 21. That's very weird. And that means that if a woman who is capable of getting married, legally married to a man who is, and their relationship is perfectly legal, they are capable of getting married, but they want to enter into a live-in relationship instead. If she's under 21, the registrar has to inform her parents.
My God.
Okay? So there's absolute infantilization of grown adult women who are legally allowed to live with anybody they want. And legally means outside of this law.
Right.
So that's one. The second thing is, and this is where the target of the sort of bullseye on interfaith couples really comes in. Because obviously on paper and, on the face of it, there's no such thing in the law. But the registrar has to examine and apply his own mind as to whether or not there is actual free consent or has there been any fraud, misrepresentation, etc. And for that, it is not required that the registrar has to only look at what the parties themselves are saying or what the woman herself is saying. Now, we know, and this is again where knowledge of what happens in society is important in drafting a law. We know that the majority of live-in relationships happen when parents are not amenable. And so this is like a workaround until, you can bring your parents around. Usually it is because it's an intercaste or an interfaith relationship. Or sometimes it is just objection to a woman having exercised her own choice as opposed to having had an arranged kind of, setup. We also know that there are many, many cases, far too many cases of objections to consensual live-in relationships, consensual interfaith, intercaste relationships by a woman's parents, saying she has been defrauded, she has been misled, he has misrepresented his religious identity, the entire bogey around love jihad, that he has lied, he has told her this is his name, that this is his community, and now so the argument of fraud, misrepresentation, and lack of free consent is something that is often weaponized into false accusations by a woman's family. And that's where the registrar can really exercise these powers. That's where the mischief can really lie. And one really needs to look at, because it is not an automatic process of registration.
And
it is permission seeking.
And
the registrar will send a notice to the police saying, you please investigate.
Exactly. He has to oversee an investigation, because how is he going to come? But coming to how the execution of a law and the legislation is connected, I'll give you an example of the Right to Information Act, which was a historic act that was passed in the Parliament of India. One of the main reasons of RTI existing is there was what you call extortive bribery happening. Like, I have applied for a permission for XYZ, or I have applied for my SC/ST card or for my pension or whatever it is. Someone can sit on it. The assumption is that the process will go through because that person... But since it is so opaque, that's why file notings became a big thing, no? That who has stopped this file from moving forward? I can file an RTI that you give me the reason why I have not got the permission yet, whether it is the permission for a factory or it is my SC/ST card. Once people are accountable, so the whole thing was because people were expecting bribes, only then will your file move. RTI kind of was of course now...
RTI is dead.
But that's also one of the reasons why legislation is resorting to, maybe I shouldn't say as a lawyer, one of the reasons, but one of the impacts of resorting to criminalization of offenses instead of making them civil offenses. Because the fear of a criminal proceeding, a criminal trial, nothing will bring a person to a negotiating table or willing to pay a bribe faster than the threat of criminal proceedings.
Right. So it's...
Right? If it is just a question of paying a fine, people will fight it out.
Yeah, but going to prison is something everybody dreads. But thank you so much for your time, Mihira. I appreciate your inputs. You can read both the pieces. But before we say goodbye to you, can you give us a recommendation that could enrich the lives of our listeners or viewers?
Okay, I recently read this book called Wellness by Nathan Hill. I think it speaks a lot to modern urban societies on all the afflictions of modern urban societies. Though it's set in America, I think we can all recognize a lot of our surroundings there.
Wellness. All right. Thank you so much, Mihira. Have a wonderful day and hope to see you in studio sometime.
Yeah, would be great.
All right.
Long
bye.
time.
Okay. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And joining us on cue with the punctuality of an atomic clock is Govindraj Ethiraj, who we have kept waiting.
What?
Hi, Govind. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Abhinandan, and hi, friend. Hi, everyone in the NL studio. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
And thank you for your compliment, which usually does not work, but anyway, today it does.
Okay, but let me first introduce you formally to our audience. Mr. Ethiraj is a senior journalist and he's the founder of India Spend Boom and was also one of the founders of Bloomberg TV India. He's worked with Business Standard as the editor of New Media and CNBC TV 18. If you remember, in the good old days, he used to anchor their shows. He was one of their big 2-star anchors. And he's been in the Economic Times. And his podcast called The Core Report, which I listen to on a daily basis now, is entered its 500th episode yesterday, day before I think it was. When was it? Yes, day before was 500th. Yesterday was the 500th episode. And I'll come straight to the point. First of all, you can wish us happy birthday. It's our 13th birthday, Newslaundry's.
Oh, wish you a very happy birthday and wish you many, many more rocking episodes of NL Hafta and many, many rocking, investigative, hard-hitting stories as you always do for Newslaundry.
Thank you. We did not pay Govind for that. This is a QR code again. If you want to gift someone a 1,300 rupee discounted subscription, you can scan this QR code or gift it to yourself and support independent journalism. 13 years, no ads, baby. Now that's a record I'm proud of. So Govind, before we get into other aspects about the budget, and I'm sure I've heard your podcast, you've had some fantastic guests and you've obviously gained a lot of knowledge from your own knowledge and from the people you've had. and about the dollar's collapse and its impact. You had an episode, I think 2 or 3 days ago, on 38%, if I have it right, of the compliances and regulatory frameworks around starting business, etc., are criminal nature, which is why there's such a fear of business, whereas it should be zero. I mean, of course, if you have a compliance violation, there should be penalties, but imprisonment is very high in violations, and that really disincentivizes business. And we were talking about the UCC in Uttarakhand, that you can be punished for not registering a live-in relationship, and the rules around that are bizarre. As far as the business aspect is concerned, can you just shed a little light based on those discussions of yours on the criminal nature of any business violations that we uniquely have in our country?
Yeah. Thanks again. So, this is based on an Observer Research Foundation report, which they wrote in 22, I think. It was called Jailed for Doing Business, and 26,000 imprisonment clause in India's business laws. It basically said that there are about 1,536 laws under which there are about 69,000 compliances, and they're split. 25,000 are central, the rest are local. And furthermore, they keep changing. So according to this report, there are some 10 changes, regulatory changes every day. Now, of these 1,536 laws, roughly half carry imprisonment clauses.
Half.
So,
Wow.
the interesting thing is that, and of course, those imprisonment clauses carry a sentence of at least a year. And, there's an interesting sort of history, not history, actually, it's an approach more than a history, because, the history we know. Someone was telling me that, I was asking about what is the fine for jumping a red light. So they said that, yes, it's, whatever, you could pay 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees or whatever, depending on where you are. But apparently hidden in that is also the clause that you could be imprisoned. So and I said, and this is obviously someone who from law enforcement and someone senior and all that. I said, so why is that there? I mean, jumping a red light is jumping a red light. So his point was that, if you only had a fine, then people don't get sufficiently intimidated or scared to follow the law. And therefore you need to put in the threat of imprisonment. Similarly, then he gave me another example. He said, in a train, if you pull a chain, right? So it's either you pay a fine or it's imprisonment or fine plus imprisonment or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really, so this is the problem. I mean, this is the threat of imprisonment is actually seemingly added quite casually into almost any law which sort of interfaces with the citizen, whether it's the regular day-to-day thing, like I talked about traffic lights, or now in this case, economic offenses. So from the point of view of maybe a law enforcer, is just a threat. But I think the problem that happens is when oftentimes the threats become routine, and the conversion is quite easy. You say, okay, you were late in paying tax, and and you were late by more than a certain period, so now we are initiating prosecution against you, and the law allows it, and prosecution for jail, and this is not prosecution to collect more fines or whatever. So I think that's really what the problem is, and what happens because of this is that it induces a fear in doing business. So I mean, you are in an office in South Delhi, and I'm sure you won't know, and you will not know how many things that you could do which could actually imprison you. From maybe not paying some tax on time to maybe not repairing some wall because it should have been, and so on and so forth. So I think that's what my focus was. I mean, the larger impact, which is that there is an unease of doing business because of this. Particularly, and small enterprises get scared, they get worried, and they're always thinking. I mean, we're all small enterprises, and we're always thinking. I mean, did we do something or did we not do something which could forget the fine and the penalty, but jail time? And that's a completely different problem. And I think that's something that is the larger worry in this case.
So speaking of intimidation, just want to point out and also thank Ms. Sita Raman and her department. We got, I think, 9 or 10 income tax notices over the last week. So thank you for birthday gift. We look forward to more. At least 3 of them are orders against us. Thank you for that as well. We look forward to more. You'll have to send a few hundred to really intimidate us. We shall, of course, be challenging those as a legal right. But do keep sending us more. And next one, send with a please happy birthday note. We'd appreciate that as well. because and we apparently have violated so many income tax laws across 4 or 5 years, and we have grown so little. We've done a recent investigation into a cabinet minister whose enterprise grew by several hundred crores. Clearly, we need to learn business from him, because I don't think a dozen income tax officers
without inviting any notice.
So we look forward to learning business from cabinet ministers, and IT department can teach us. But thank you. We look forward to more IT notices. But it will not stop us from what we do, in case that was the intent. I'm not saying it is, but in case. That's always.
And if there was a notice or a raid against this cabinet minister, it was ignored.
But yeah. So, Govind, now coming to the budget, many people who I spoke with were saying that after the budget, the market will once again go up. The market has, on the Sensex and the Bombay stock, I think it's corrected about 20% of the last 4-5 months since the September high, if I'm not wrong.
12%, I think,
12-13%, but specific portfolios depending on whether you're mid-cap.
Much more. Many stocks are down 50% and more, and so on. Yeah.
So, but
the index is maybe not so much.
So there was a thing that it'll jump after the election, and if everyone, it hasn't happened so far. Of course, the US and Trump's unpredictably has a lot to do with it. But as far as the budget is concerned, this 12 lakh up to 12 lakh tax exemption, etc., etc., etc. Can you break down any outlier features that this budget has offered, or like often is the case, there's a lot of noise and discussions because that is convention and that is what feeds broadcasters 24-hour session. Anything notable that is worth discussing in depth?
I think there are a few specifics that may be worth discussing. The budget, from my sense, is, if there is no bad news, is the good news, is how I would see it. The second thing is, if you look at what some business leaders at least are saying, is they're calling it balanced. So when they say balanced and not great, I think that's a fairly good indicator of what they're really thinking, which is that, there is nothing really landmark in this budget. I think the middle class, obviously the benefit to the middle class and that 70,000-80,000 rupees or more that they get in their pockets is a good thing. I think it's only correcting a problem of the past, which is that of the recent past, which is that there is a pressure of inflation on households and people are feeling it. Incomes are not growing like they did before. So if you're in that range, and typically if you're in that range, you're also you're the likely candidate to spend more. You've obviously been feeling the pressure of prices going up across, whether it's goods or services. And you're also seeing that your incomes are not rising. Best case, it could rise 10%, but many cases it may not. If you look at people who, the popular example is that of young engineers who join some of these big IT companies, whether it's Infosys or TCS. 10 to 15 years ago, starting salary, 4 lakhs. 2024, 25, starting salary, 4 lakhs. Right. Give or take. And there are business and market reasons for that. So I wouldn't unfairly attack them, but I think that's life. If you're a young engineer from an okay college, maybe not the top college, starting a career and so on, this is what you're likely to earn.
Actually, that's more true for our industry, Govind. I don't know whether you remember the late 2000, let's say 4 to 2010, in broadcast as a producer, the amount I could charge as a director for per episode on TV shows, and I was a consultant on one network. The amount I was paid as a consultant in a month is what probably one of the top 4 editors get paid today as a full-time job. So even in our industry, the salaries have not just stagnated, they've dropped by about 50 to 60%.
Yeah, and accounting for inflation and so on. So I think I think the finance minister definitely had a problem, and there was a post-COVID sort of surge in consumption, which happened across the world. But I have a feeling we took it for granted. I have a feeling that in many other economies, people realized that was what was driving consumption and therefore didn't take it for granted, at least mentally. Whereas I feel we did. But not that it could have changed outcomes much. We're clearly seeing an earnings growth slowdown. I was listening to this fund manager called Saurabh Mukherjee, and he says this is and let me use his words so as to not make a mistake. He says that this is the biggest or the sharpest earnings growth slowdown in a generation. excluding COVID and Lehman Brothers and so on. So that if I mean Lehman Brothers goes back to 2008.
Yeah.
So the economy has really slowed, or at least the earnings have slowed and the growth has slowed. So all of this means that things are not in the best shape and right now, and which is why the markets are reflecting that. The markets realize that usually markets grow in relation to earnings. So if you say, okay, my earnings are going to grow at 10%, then markets will be sort of some factor above that. But if that's not happening, then obviously markets are slowing down. So which in turn is causing foreign investors to sell, among other reasons. But foreign investors have been selling heavily in the last year, that's 2024 and 25. It's more than $9 billion in 25 already. All of 2024, I think their net positive investment was only $500 million, $500 million net positive for all of 2024. So, I mean, that's one indicator. It's not the only indicator because domestic investors are investing too. So I think the markets are reflecting that lack of optimism, and till earnings improve, till companies start doing better, things will not pick up. You can only go that far on sentiment.
And as a bigger picture, how reflective are markets? And I'm talking about, stock markets, bond markets, an indicator of the economic health of a country. Because I remember, and this is, I had quoted in a column I had written in the late 2000s again, where everyone used to talk about the booming stock market. And of course, at that time, I was a huge critic of the UPA government, which seems so wonderful now compared to, what I thought of it then. The best performing stock market of Asia at that time was actually Lahore.
Yes.
And it was under Pervez Musharraf. And my logic was that, those who were very excited about, oh, look, our economy is doing so well because the stock market is doing so well, just look across. Maybe you should attend, and that's not even a democracy. So how accurate is an indicator? Is the market an indicator of the overall economic health of a country, or do we just spend too much time on it because it is people who invest in the markets who can pay for subscriptions, who have purchasing power, so all ads are targeted at them and the others can fuck off, they don't matter?
So, I mean, all of this is really about the 100 million of this country, which is growing obviously at a much higher rate than the rest of the country. I mean, I think HSBC said it's the 15% of the economy which is growing at 15%. It may, I mean, some would argue it's less. Goldman Sachs said 100 million. And that's really the market. I mean, and if we were honest, all of us are part of the same 100 million.
Absolutely.
So, so the markets, I think in the short term can be driven by sentiment, but medium to long term, usually they reflect fundamentals. I mean, at least whenever I've seen or tried to look back, it's always been linked to fundamentals. I think you mentioned Lahore. I'm not familiar with Lahore specifically, but I think there are some objective and maybe somewhat less objective parameters. But you look at depth of the market, you look at how many stocks are part of it. Are major companies represented in India? It's a particularly wide market. I mean, you don't have just private companies like a Reliance or a Levers or Nestle, but you also have a lot of public sector companies who are also valued pretty well, including, let's say, the oil companies or defense companies or Hindustan Aeronautics, which is an aviation or aircraft manufacturing company, or shipyards. And power company, NTPC. So that's so I would say that the stock markets have a reasonably good representation, even in the short to medium term. Maybe not short. I mean, if you say, okay, it shot up so much because the government came back to power, that's usually a sentimental reaction. But I think when you look at it over 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, I think I would say it's a more fundamental reaction, and for good reason. I mean, I do believe that the Indian markets are reasonably deep and reasonably wide and are well represented. And we have more than 5,000 stocks. So that's not necessarily the only reason, but I think we're reasonably well represented. The companies that are listed are also reasonable barometers of what's happening in the economy, which, as you can see right now from all the commentary, if bank stocks, for example, are slightly under strain, it's because maybe there is some slowdown in lending, or they're not able to raise enough deposits. If you look at companies like Levers and Nestle, whose stocks have been under pressure for more than a year now, it's because their top lines have slowed down, because consumption has slowed down, which is also visible elsewhere. It's not just Levers results that have to tell me that.
And this 12 lakh exemption is more attuned to maybe showing a bit of a bump in the consumer companies, where there is some.
I think so. I mean, I think it's it potentially, but I mean, it's like if I were to, you have to go. I mean, you have to look at what does it do to some of us, right? So suppose I was earning that, and I know that this year I'm going to get more. It's quite likely that maybe I will invest half of that, or put some in a bank, or maybe repay past loans, which I suspect is the case with many people. Because a lot of people are actually living stretched existences, because that's precisely why Reserve Bank has been so worried about unsecured small ticket loans becoming so big, that people are borrowing buy now, pay later, small loans, and whatever, and enjoying, sort of doing something in fun or entertainment, or buying things, or mobile phones. So we've had a huge consumer boom in the post-COVID period. A lot of it has been driven by loans and so on.
Credit.
So people have stretched themselves.
Before I move on to the dollar bit, I know Govind has to go. Just want to correct myself. It's called the Pakistan Stock Exchange. The building is in Lahore, but it is called the Pakistan Stock Exchange, even though it's housed in Lahore. Any comments on the budget before we move on to the dollars, becoming so expensive in India and its reasons and impacts? Raman, Manisha, Anand, did you guys were you glued to the TV during the budget, and did you have any moments of wah or no, or you were like,
I was just amazed with the 12 lakh exemption, but then I think it had to do a lot with the Delhi elections. Because the advertisements, the BJP advertisements did say that vote for us because,
Sorry, coming to that, isn't there a silent period? Like the day of election, there was a front page ad.
But that's everywhere they flout it. Every election I've attended, the front pages have a party ad. Sometimes Congress, BJP, TMC.
No, there was a Congress ad and a BJP ad, but I thought it wasn't allowed.
No, I think it's just the silent period thing is a bit of a joke.
No one is silent.
Even this 12 lakh
doesn't really apply to.
Said, is correcting the past.
Yeah. And acknowledging that there's something amiss.
Correcting the past. If you look at the economic survey, the average income of a person has gone down from 12,800 to 11,600 from 2017 to 2023.
Wow.
Okay. And in case of women, it is worst. It is from 10,500, it has gone down to 8,000 something, 8,800 or so. So I think this is correcting the past. This is one. I think it is also, I mean, if you look at the list of the taxpayers, I think half of them are the zero taxpayers. Say if there are 1 lakh or 100 people paying the tax, half of them don't pay any tax. They're just submitting they are the zero taxpayers.
Filing returns. They're just filing returns.
Yes,
they don't pay direct tax.
Yes.
Indirect tax or sab dete hain. Yes, Anand, you were saying?
No, I think this was a budget where government could have taken some political risks, and it has taken. I don't link it to Delhi elections. It has taken in the way it has catered to the middle class, which has been this party's traditional vote bank, but it has also now drifted to other segments or other political players. One reflection of it was that in the economic survey, we could see that the rural consumption is up, but the urban consumption is going down. So one way of correcting is to give some relief or tax breaks to the salaried middle class. The other way of, invigorating the consumption was the public spending that the government had been doing for last 3-4 years. But this time they have taken a kind of risk, maybe because till Bihar there is no big election, and also. Not only the middle class, they have also gone to the new middle class, the gig workers, and they have made them register on the e-Shram portal, extended social benefit like Pradhan Mantri Arogya Yojana to them. So this catering to that is a corrective with an eye on, say, fiscal consolidation, because they have also targeted coming from 4.8% of the GDP to 4.4%, which is that there is still eyeing that in the fiscal consolidation. The other thing is that the means skilling bit could have been a better focus area, but it has got some lip service, but not much. That's all.
Right.
I think I think the key question is jobs, Abhinandan. I think and no government will have easy answers. I mean, India is not such an easy country to govern. I mean, though even if you make it appear so. And the reason we talked about these criminalization. I mean, what does it do? It makes businesses uncertain. It gives them an element of fear, which prevents them from investing or expanding, because you hear stories about other people having problems or whatever. So, and there are so many things linked to it. I mean, ease of doing business is broken down into many things. I mean, I talk to, let's say, the big four consulting companies, including on my show, they're talking about the same thing. And so is the small garment exporter from Tirupur. So there is a problem. And unless we fix this, and these are plumbing issues. I mean, these are not things you can legislate from the top. You can't say, announce it in the finance while presenting the union budget and things will get resolved. No, it won't. I mean, a lot of problems are at the state level, every state. A lot of things have to do with the inspectors who land up and make life miserable. And one inspector lands up, if it's a small 10-person company or outfit, even in manufacturing, everyone's life gets affected. So I think those are things that we have to show direction. I mean, you can't solve everything overnight. I think the other big concern or thing that I was looking out for was, the world has changed since Trump took over. I mean, we're on the verge of trade war, global trade wars. Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% on China. Mexico, Canada, he's called it off, held it in abeyance for 1 month, but China continues. China has retaliated. As of now, India, we don't know whether he's going to impose tariffs or not, but we've already, in anticipation, reduced our tariffs, including for Harley-Davidson bikes. And we, according to Reuters, there's a Reuters report which says we're looking at 32 items of import from the US for which we will reduce tariffs. So this is a new world. And businesses have to be ready for it. I mean, policy has to be ready also. And in a way, it's a good thing that the Prime Minister is headed to the US. Maybe he'll negotiate something good for the business, the economy, and so on. But the point is that businesses have to be ready for this this world, which has become even more certain. And that is something that I did not see in the budget. Now, I think the government's position is that we can't do anything, and we will have to wait to see what Trump does. Yes, that's a good tactical response. But the point is that we have fundamental problems wherein we are not ready to face in many industries. I mean, you take garments as an example, in exports to the US, China is, I think, at 20%, Vietnam is 17, 18%, India is at Bangladesh is at 9%, and India is at 6%. Okay, this is US imports of apparel and all these countries share. So India is at 6%, Bangladesh is at 9%. So whatever the reasons are. And then Cambodia, even a country like Cambodia is at 4%. I think Indonesia is at 5%. So just behind us. I mean, these are such small countries.
Yeah.
Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, such small countries, and they have such large share of garment and apparel exports. I mean, and these are industries where once upon a time we had massive advantages and traditional strengths. I mean, if you look at everyone, Reliance started as a textile company. I mean, every company in India, Shriram Mills, everyone has started from textiles. So we've lost that. And we're not just lost that, we're losing it at light speed. So how do we fix that? And how do we, bring back more manufacturing? And a lot of this is to do with the nuts and bolts of policy making, the nuts and bolts of doing business. And we have to solve those problems. And all budgets will do some good things. They may not do some good things and all that. But unless we solve this, how do we create more jobs? How do we, create more consumption, more buying power? I think those are the in a changing world.
But I think the whole trickle down, the only way trickle down works is, I don't believe trickle down economics works. The only trickle down that works is the attitude towards governance. And in that, the small inspector follows the lead of the Prime Minister, that I am the bully. You counter out to me, and then your business will be allowed to survive. And that is how everybody works. But just 3 quick points I want to make. One is that, you were talking about how people get disincentivized. Like, for example, this guy comes, the inspector comes, everyone gets, Now, I don't know, there were about, I think, 6 or 7 interns the day we were raided. It was a survey, and 8 people come, they lock the doors, give your phone. Now, those 4-5 guys were interns. For some of them, it was the second or third day in Newslaundry. I could see they were so petrified. I doubt any of them will join news again. Because if that was their first experience, bloody hell, I'm here interning.
With the news click too, like there were reporters, whatever the case was, there were reporters whose laptops were taken.
So, I mean, about the middle class SOPs, at least today's numbers in the Delhi election, if the whole budget was to kind of attract the Delhi voter, the middle class, of all the colonies from Karol Bagh, all the middle class colonies, and it's amazing how we call even the 100 million middle class, like the gig worker is middle class. And if you see how much a gig worker earns, it is pathetic compared to how much we earn. It's not even in the same stratosphere.
Yeah.
But yet, everyone wants to throw themselves into middle class. So, but the true middle class, their numbers, voting numbers in Delhi actually went down since last time. So, I don't know if it actually helped the BJP in any way.
But everyone benefits. I think, I don't know. Yes, you could be, a cynical way and maybe whatever. It's a view that, yes, this is only for Delhi elections or Bihar elections. But I suspect something like this, everyone benefits. So in the larger scheme of things, it's fine. But I think the larger issue equally is what are we doing about conceptually and fundamentally and long term about creating jobs, making it easier for small businesses to set up, to start, to flourish, to grow. And large businesses as well. See, we have a very funny problem on taxes, So we've given middle class tax. People say, no, increase taxes on richer people. You increase tax beyond a certain point, or you make it more difficult. They all run away.
Yeah, of course, no doubt. Right? They'll go.
And we've seen that. Tens of thousands of millionaires have left, continue to leave. They go and settle in Dubai, Singapore, the United States. And they're paying. And many of those jurisdictions like Dubai have very low to zero taxes. And they're happy, spend 6 months there, 6 months here.
And regarding this dollars, the rupee slide against the dollar, I'm hearing, partly from your podcast, there are certain factors that may make, fuel prices cheaper, which would help a country like India that spends much of its dollars on actually importing fuel. But on the other hand, with Trump's rhetoric against Iran saying that he'll get the exports to zero, and from what I understand, India does import some
80% of its crude oil from outside.
From Iran. I don't know how much of it is from Iran. But if he says, I'll take I think Iran earns about $53 billion from oil exports. He says he'll bring it down to zero. If he does that, then actually fuel prices will go up.
For us, yeah.
Now, does the weaker rupee have to do with Trump's unpredictability? Does it have to do with our economy being miserably weak? And from, again, your podcast, I hear that the slide should ease up now. It is not going to hit 90 in a hurry, but it will eventually. Can you give us why it's happening and how it impacts us?
I'm not a forex expert, but let me sort of try and give you the distilled version of what I pick up as you do. So I think firstly, it predates Trump. I think the rupee has been under pressure for some time because the dollar also has been strong. It's obviously got stronger since November after Trump was elected. There are 2 or 3 reasons. I think a lot of it is, one is the pressure that you face from an oncoming currency like the dollar, but equally your own economy and how things are doing. And the Indian economy is weak. So most Asian currencies have been weak in the last year or so, and they've depreciated. So has the rupee. But I think the last couple of months, the rupee has depreciated more because people feel that the economy now has slowed down. That may not be the case with a lot of other Asian countries. The Reserve Bank has been managing the rupee. It's been buying dollars at various points and managing the rupee. And we were treating that as a good thing because we said, the rupee is the most stable currency, one of the most stable currencies in the world, the most stable currency in Asia, I think, in 23 and 24. So it was always in that band of 83, 84, or depending on, or a slightly lower band earlier. Now we feel that maybe it was not the best thing to hold the currency because we've created an artificial sense of stability, which was not there. So the currency has to reflect what the state of the economy is. Like the dollar reflects the strength of the US economy. And I would argue, or having seen it over time, that we should not interfere with its natural level. And now, is the natural level 90 or maybe a little more or a little less? I don't know. But the closer it is to that natural level, it's better. Economist Ajay Shah, for example, says that when you maintain a dollar at such a stable level or the rupee at such a stable level, you're taking away the risk from companies. A company's job is to manage that
Correct.
risk. Why are you transferring the risk from the private sector to the government and
Correct.
taxpayers?
Hmm.
So, so I see the merit of that. I mean, let businesses manage the risk. If it goes up, I mean, it depreciates too much. Obviously, there is a problem in the economy because we're paying more for oil and other imports.
And in
but
fact,
on the other hand, it can even out as well.
And I heard that podcast. He said that basically incentivizes careless behavior by private businesses
Exactly.
who have a lot of
Yeah.
forex dealings because
Exactly.
if they know the
Yeah,
government
yeah.
is going to handle it. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I could go on asking.
Does he have to? Do you have to rush, Govind? Because I had a question.
Quick one, yeah.
It's not quick though. But so if you have to rush, you can rush.
We'll get you
No.
again. We'll get him for an hour.
Yeah. Happy to join you again.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll get you for an hour. There are many questions that even I have left unanswered. But before we go quickly, any recommendation? Of course, I recommend the Core Report as a podcast. I listen to it pretty much daily. It is something I wish Newslaundry had the capacity of doing, but we don't. So as long as I'm concerned, as long as the ecosystem is getting strengthened, it's good for all of us. So do listen to that. But other than that, any other recommendations, Govind?
Yeah, no, firstly, thank you, Abhinandan, for having me. It's always a pleasure to meet Manisha and all your team members once again. The book I want to recommend is a little on a slightly different plane. It's called Sacred Waters by Stephen Alter. And I went to the mountains after a long time in December. So that prompted me to, read up a little more. And Sacred Waters is really about the story of the major rivers of India in the north. And it starts with Stephen Alter going to Bhagirathi and then Devprayag and that whole part. But sort of mixing it with history and mythology and all of that. So it's a good sort of revisit for me. And I just want to read a little more about that area because I intend to go back. So
Yes.
I recommend anyone wanting to read about the history, mythology, and on-ground narrative about how the sacred rivers of India originated, where they are today. I think this is a good book.
Thanks, Govind.
Great.
More power to you and see you around hopefully soon sometime in our studio.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Look forward. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Now, I have a quick announcement to remind everyone it's the 13th birthday. Here's a QR code. You know the drill. Do what you can, do what you have to. I want to just briefly discuss the Tamil Nadu governors versus the Tamil Nadu government and the Supreme Court order. But before we do that, on the budget, on the dollar, any other inputs or feedback? What did you want to ask him though? We'll get him for a longer
It
time.
was more a philosophical question of colonized nations and choosing democracy and whether that comes in the way of economic goals.
Interesting. I think Anand would like to explore that.
No, so
would
where the
like to play with
question-
that.
What does it do with budget?
Not
No,
but it's just it's
No,
a
so
matter
I'll
of
just
it's a
elaborate.
philosophy.
Basically, he talked about his law enforcement friend who said that Indians essentially will not listen until there's a fear of jail. That's the logic of why we're penalizing everyone even for jumping a red light. I was recently in Vietnam and I was blown away by the economic activity, the sense of growth, optimism, the participation of women in business. And of course, it's a manufacturing hub today. But when you're there, you see what they're manufacturing. It's actually world-class stuff, like shoes, for example.
Right.
In India, you've had Agra leather industry for so long, but it's nowhere close to what Vietnam is producing, manufacturing. And how clean it was. I was blown away. I mean, Ho Chi Minh City there's no Indian city that comes close to cleanliness. And it's sad. And I zeroed it down. I was wondering why. Because they were colonized like us. They were battered in the war with America. Humiliated like the other colonized nations. But they've been able to kind of now, I think GDP per capita, they've beaten India. I zeroed it down to them being a police state. Like the only sense I could make of it is that once you get rid of this mess of democracy, you can kind of enforce.
Dear God, listen to you, this mess of democracy.
No, so I wanted to know from him and then cut to what he's talking about India, right? This role of trying to just scare everyone with jail, to get them to comply. And I was wondering, like, when it comes to colonized nations, is there something we know about the ones that chose democracy and the ones that went into like police state, no democracy, and whether that had something to do with their growth trajectory?
Well, it doesn't necessarily answer exactly your question, but is in the same space. Is the Nobel Prize for Economics that was given this year was for a paper on which three people wrote together on former colonies and their was it for economics? I'll just check. And they have studied how their democracies and their laws evolved depending on what their position was in the colonizing power. And it had to do with how many of the colonizing powers people went and settled there. And that had a huge impact because they've looked at Nigeria, they've looked at African countries, they've looked at Australia, they've looked at India, they've looked at many countries, and their approach to laws is directly proportional to how many of those people went and settled there. Were they just settlers or were they just exploiting resources and getting it back to their countries? So, but yeah, not exactly a question, but that's an interesting...
But maybe like I'd want an economist to weigh in like behaviors that make business conducive. And what role does democracy or a police state have?
Yep.
Because like Vietnam, it was interesting, like the hotel where we stayed in the morning, the whole staff would sing the national anthem, which to me was just like, why are they doing? They'll have a military drill for just changing like customs, who's the guy who checks the passport control thing. When their shift ends, they would get up and do like a strange military kind of a drill. So I was just like, and people say that if you really want to see what real nationalism means, go to China. It's a very nationalist kind of a, and that's what some of what Modi wants to do here, right? Like pride in India, Bharat Pehle. It's very superficial. But it's kind of, I think it's trying to ape that model of sense of pride. You were battered. And China had this whole, like they had this in schools, like ingrained.
Actually, this
so
whole,
anyway, it'd be interesting to have somebody with an economic perspective to weigh in on this.
You will, automatically you will feel proud when your teams win. In sports, or if your institutions are become stronger day by day. Okay, here if you just create fear in me, you better be proud of the nation. Whatever we are, we are a very dirty city. We are everything. So it doesn't happen that.
Also, I think that you'll have to see both sides. For example, at least my experience of having gone to Pakistan and dealt with a lot of Pakistanis. Pakistan is a lot more patriotic than us. Pakistan. But there it has had the opposite effect as in Vietnam, And at least from my understanding, Pakistan is so over the top patriotic is because they need to overcompensate because it's such a loser country. It's fucked. It's a failed state. And especially when dealing with Indians, they want to show like Pakistan. Because, bhai, it is a poor substitute for any real achievement. So, some extremely loser countries also are overly patriotic. So I don't think there's any correlation there. But, on the governor versus Supreme Court, maybe we'll deal with it next time because the LG and the Vice Chancellor's issue also will be in the same space. So hopefully Anand will be there for that discussion because I want that to be a 35-40 minute discussion. But I just want to again remind everybody that we'll be closing our Delhi Sena Fund. And while recording this, it still hasn't been topped up, which is rather unfortunate. But this is your last chance. You can top up the NL Sena Fund for Delhi election because here's the QR code. Because we don't take any ads. It has been 13 years, no ads, only subscriber-funded journalism. So we are approximately at 6 lakhs. We are about 3.5 lakhs short. Most of the coverage is finished, just maybe a few stories are left. We'd really appreciate it if you scan this QR code and contributed to our revenue so that we can continue to the journalism without fear of favor or having to suck up to any brands or governments to give us ads or benefits.
No, there are many deep dive stories
still pending
in Delhi polls. They are emerging stories.
I see. So
it will continue. We may keep following, for months for that.
Okay, so please do. The QR code is staying on for a long time. Producer, please make sure it stays for a long time so people can pick up their phone or take a screenshot. Do what you have to do. Please do contribute. So let's get on to the emails. We only entertain the emails of subscribers. You can mail us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. We don't only ask for subscriptions. We also ask you to give feedback so that we can get better. And many of our best ideas have come from your feedback. So there is a link in the show notes as well, which will open out this little form. And please keep your emails below 150 words because, again, this idea also came from you subscribers after figuring out how do we deal with letters that are more than 150 words. What emerged was only read till the 150th word. After that, just don't read the rest. So that's what we're going to do. So what is the feedback this week? Let's read a few, maybe not all.
Yoshimitsu says regarding Trump fulfilling what he had promised in his first term. No, he didn't. Remember, he ran as the representative of the masses in his first term. What was his first step? Cut taxes on the rich. Something he's done again. Has he said there'll be no income tax? We'll go back to the Gilded Age in America.
He said that earlier, but I'm not sure to the specific promise. But yes, he has said that at some point that we shouldn't pay any tax at all.
Talked about draining the swamp, didn't do it at all. In fact, brought his family into the fall. No wars, well, broke the Iran nuclear deal that Obama had brochured. I think on no war, though, we can give him some credit on that. It was a relatively non-interventionist US government. Remember the wall? Well, there's no wall. Being a free speech messiah, well, filed multiple cases against CNN, even Bill Maher, over a joke. If you've noticed, US media is doing its godification as well. The orange orangutan learns from the fakir. My God. Using different pseudonyms because anonymous is boring.
Right. Okay, Yoshimitsu,
Okay.
thank you.
Kazuya says, had seen Manisha's post questioning why air pollution is not an issue in Delhi elections. Well, because the incentive structure is hardly in place for it. A large bucket that these politicians are targeting are the ones for whom air quality is just too high on the Maslow hierarchy of needs. The middle class is probably the least reliable voter anyway, and a portion of them are anyway radicalized. So while I appreciate the attempt you're making at questioning the authority, give it 3-4 months and you'll be questioning how 10 to 15 minutes of rain can flood Delhi NCR. I know, seasonal. This is like a cyclical. Until the middle class became a reliable voter and marches out on the street, this will stay. And the last time I checked, India's middle class was actually shrinking. Appreciate the work you're doing. Although water pollution was a concern this election, one must say that. But that's also very direct. You can see from the tap, bad water coming and you're using it for very physical things. Air, I think the problem is also, you just can't see it. And it takes too long for it to give you cancer. So no one's going to immediately protest. But water, you can see the
The water quality, I mean, say in UP where I stay, Noida, I mean Delhi, NCR, whatever, is pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody can drink from the tap water.
Same here.
Nobody can.
Same here. We had like lots of reports saying,
Yes.
complaining about water quality in Delhi. Ashish Silla says, hi NL team. I love your podcast and want to thank you for sparking my interest in politics and help me develop perspectives on current affairs. I have a couple of conundrums I'd love to hear your thoughts on, especially from Abhinandan, though I'd appreciate insights from the whole team. Women's dress code in temples. Should women be judged for what they wear to temples? I often support my wife in wearing what she's comfortable in. But where do we draw the line? If skirts are acceptable, then why not a bikini? Who decides what is appropriate? Immigration laws. Should all immigrants be welcomed? If so, what happens when demographics shifts drastically, potentially leading to conflicts like Palestine and Israel? If immigration should be restricted, where does humanity factor in? Keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, so on the first, let's ask the panel. Women's dress code in temples. It's been recently introduced, I think, which...
Where?
They've just said, no, I'll just check. But yes, let me go around the panel on women's dress code and immigration laws. Anand, do you have a take on it?
Immigrants are of different types. Which kind of immigrants?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very general question. So if you have a general view, you can give that.
Means, I think we live as territorially marked citizens. So, and land is a limited resource for any nation state. So, it can cause economic backlash from people who have been living there for very long. So that's also a political constituency that political players can encash. So that's given the resources, given the nature of the origin of nation states, there is not a clear-cut answer to that there should be welcome or not. They should not be treated inhumanly. That's a non-negotiable thing. But whether they should overstay their welcome, I am not very definite about it. What was the other question?
Dress codes in temples.
Dress codes in temples.
Dress code in temples. I don't go to temples. I don't see what people wear. But I think a temple as an institution, it is also an institution. So just like a school or college, it can have its rules. So if it is just say a public shared space and a very public entity, and a kind of public square, then that's a different thing. But it is also governed by institutional norms. So also people who come there for certain institutional integration into certain values. So if there is a point where it comes in contradiction with that, then you can have a code or anyway.
Manisha, you have a take on either of these?
Temples, I think all religious institutions have their mores, like gurdwaras, you have to cover your head. Dargahs, often you have to wear, you can't wear sleeveless, they'll ask you to wear
Or cover your head.
Dargahs, not usually, I've not seen cover your
Ajmer,
head.
you have to cover your head,
But you
no?
have to, yeah, okay.
I think so. Ajmer, you have to
I
cover
mean,
your
they tell you to not show your arms and all that.
Mm.
Similarly, temples also have, I think if you're going to a temple and you seek that, what you get out of religion, which is sort of organized with a certain set of rules, I don't understand the point of unnecessarily riling up, I'll land up with a bikini or whatever. It doesn't make sense to me. I think you go with what the tradition is.
I think the religious places have to evolve. All the religious places. I am nobody to tell, a person what that person should wear, or what that person should not wear. But yes, I think it is more or less automatically people follow it. I mean, more or less everybody follows.
Exactly.
Everybody. I mean, this is where I'm against such codes, frankly speaking, if in one sentence. And second is immigration also. I think the world is shrinking. I think immigrants, it should be legalized. The world is shrinking. People should...
There should be processes for...
There should be processes. Otherwise, I think people will continue to defy it.
On immigration, I have very radical views. I feel like, especially when it comes to the white man who landed up uninvited on our shores, looted us, plundered us, took over our land and called themselves enlightened. Now it's our time to be enlightened.
I'm in her team.
We are the new Christopher Columbuses. These Punjabis who are going everywhere. And South Asia, and it's only going to increase when you have climate change. For example, in the next 20 years, you are going to have so many climate migrants. We are not going to now just suffer in our subcontinent. You have a place in Canada, we'll come there, man. Like you came here.
So just one correction, the recent one a week ago, it was Siddhivinayak temple. Short skirts and torn jeans.
There's a middle ground between covering yourself and wearing a bikini. I think and most places have that. You can wear jeans.
But again, I think some of these, for example, when at the media rumble, when Suki had come and she wanted to see the Jama Masjid, she and Mike Resendez, I had taken them there. And she was wearing a longish skirt, which was sleeveless. And the whatever imam or whatever dude is there, he came and, they have this, he says, here, you'll have to cover yourself and then you can go in. Now, when she covered herself, it did not make a dramatic difference.
Yeah.
But bhai, ab kuch karna hai. So for example, ab torn jeans. Now, how do they know are the jeans torn for style, or can the guy not afford? You see, some of these tentuas are just ki boss, kuch karte hain.
Don't look nice, basically.
Kuch
torn
karte
jeans
hain.
mein agar aap gareeb lag rahe ho to theek hai, lekin
what does that mean? Suppose I have torn jeans. Okay, not me, but for example, the guy who we see him often, the guy who cleans the road outside our office. He pretty much wears the same trousers very regularly. There's a huge torn patch. Now, will he be checked? Because he wears that because he can't afford another pair. So, I mean, some of these rules are just, when you ask a team for feedback, sometimes they have no feedback to give, but because you've asked, they have to give. Whether it's relevant or not, this is what many of these guys are doing.
Temples, though, fairly have modernized, I feel. In terms, jeans is not a taboo. Maybe torn jeans are, but jeans people wear. Tops and shirts, Western clothes you can wear.
Yeah.
You don't have to cover your head or whatever. So
on immigrants, I don't have a short take. I have a very long take, so I'll let it go.
You believe in take over the white land? Brown people must now...
That's not how I worded, but yeah, I think there have to be it has to be a lot more liberal than it is in the West, because their fortunes are based on the plunders that they did of us. So they can't say, and of course, I really want to interview an Elon Musk fan, because Elon Musk just tweeted now that America should allow white migrants from South Africa.
He said that?
Yeah.
So he's totally fully out of the closet now as...
So, I mean, ab ye to haal hai. And iske cheerleaders bhi hai, because I'm on a group, many of the jackasses there have no idea about what Elon Musk is saying, the political implications,
Shit.
illiterates. But because Trump, Elon Musk, Modi, Trump, Elon Musk, they will share everything Elon Musk says. I'm like, theek hai yaar, kya kar?
You see, migrants in India. So you see, despite being a Bihari, I empathize with people. Now, I don't have a good view of, say, some of our regional communities because the way they have treated Bihari migrants. But there is also a view that if you overpopulate a limited area of land with workers, they may be exploiting you for your work, and they may be giving you this self-defeating compliment that you don't look like a Bihari, and Biharis are very, very happy to hear that you don't look like a Bihari. And it's a self-denying identity that and you see in Punjab, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, these regional communities, Biharis. My neighbor has a very condescending attitude towards me, and
Because you're Bihari?
Yes, I get it.
Don't look like that.
No. I will be happy to look like a Bihari. Because of the ways, and sometimes I look at it in a detached way and look it from their point of view. That okay, so maybe here is a situation where they feel that they. And this is a common refrain in a lot of Indian cities, that this city was better 50 years back, and now in Bangalore and in Chennai.
But it's true, because population has grown. It's inevitable.
And for that matter, in even a small town like Patna, say,
Dehradun, man.
I think it was better 30, 40 years back, because of less people and more open space, and also the kind of interactive pattern between people. But why this backlash? That intrigues me. It intrigues me, and this has to do with human nature. And some of the complaints that people who have been originally living in a space for a number of decades are even if they are immoral, they are not unreasonable.
Right.
So that is my take.
Right.
Parag Deb says, I'm writing my first letter in 6 years as a loyal subscriber. I'm puzzled by the Kumbh Mela ritual where millions take a dip in a holy water to gain spirituality. How can bathing in water that might be polluted lead to true spiritual cleansing? As a believer and quote-unquote technical Hindu, I find it hard to understand how dipping in unclean water can bring about inner purity. I'm not trying to criticize, but rather to seek an explanation of this ancient practice in today's world. How does this ritual work to generate spirituality despite the water's imperfections? I would appreciate my insight you can provide on this curious mix of faith and modern challenges. Thank you for taking the time to consider my question.
Faith is faith, Parag. Some dip in water, but you can see because rivers are so dirty, it's okay. I mean, in Gurdwaras, you take a dip in the Kund, in Harmandir Sahib. In other places, you bow in a particular direction. In fact, the people who are very radical, I have been told by a pilot relative of mine, when you fly international, they insist on reading namaz during namaz time. You have to go tell them, dude, it's shifting. The Mecca is. You'll have to keep. So faith is unreasonable and irrational. So there's nothing unique about taking a dip in a river.
No, not only a dip. I think in future people are going to discuss how you should take a dip. Like Prime Minister took a dip with red cloth.
So what is the prescribed procedure?
So the entire and all the anchors were talking about what is the. And they were spiritual experts were talking the relevance of red when you take a dip. So I think now that is also good.
Anand, you want to comment on the short history of Kumbh in terms how does it?
There's no short history of Kumbh.
No,
Kumbh has a very long history.
It has to be concise.
About India does not have a short
history. No, but dipping in water during the Magh Mela, because you've had this ritual of wanna
I
comment?
had a
No?
ritual.
No, in
No,
Bihar, na,
India
wo jo
has had this.
dubki lete hai na, it's very big thing, na, in Chhat pe.
Chhat.
Is there any,
No,
you know,
Chhat is a different thing.
no, but the significance of water, dipping in water.
Chhat is sun worship. So Chhat is a very different thing, and Chhat is unique because the sunset is also worshipped as well as sunrise. So dipping because Bihar is a riparian state with number of water bodies. So that is one thing. Means water, of course, throughout Indian culture is considered holy. So that is I don't, even if there is another significance, I'm not aware of that.
Suman says, for all the people who've gotten this far, for maybe another free episode of Hafta, I request all of you to subscribe to Newslaundry.
Listen to Sumant. Here's
If
the
it
QR
isn't
code. It'll keep flashing. Carry on.
If it isn't free, please keep this free as well. This is free so that all of you free hoarders subscribe to Newslaundry. And what better day to do it than on our birthday week with a 13% discount? No, 1300 rupee discount. 1300 rupee, not 13%. As a customer, I have never been this satisfied, not dissatisfied, this satisfied, especially with the ground reports. For example, the latest Kumbh Mela to Delhi elections. I highly recommend you all read that report by Basant, which puts the death toll at 79. I highly appreciate the NL leadership for taking feedback seriously, and so please pay to keep news free.
Yeah.
My best effort to get people to subscribe so all the reports get a raise. All the reporters get a raise, I hope.
Thank you,
and the
Sumant.
leadership also.
Thank you, Sumant. Please listen to Sumant. Subscribe. QR code will keep flashing.
I have used my 150 words on South Central. Please give that a read too. Okay.
All right.
Peri Sai Teja says, many Abhinandans to the NL team. Huh? Pun intended. Many Abhinandans, okay, like that. Namaste type. Okay. Thanks for reading my loophole-ridden letter last week. Though this too is a handwritten letter, I assure you that care has been taken to respect the 150 word limit. It doesn't seem so though.
This one it has. Yeah.
It is 150
words, yes.
Blame needs to be placed as much at the Bhakt/people/devotees who've gotten drunk on this dharam ka nasha as the administration. Why otherwise would anyone go to dip oneself in an otherwise polluted river in crowded circumstances? Wouldn't taking a regular bath in one's house, keeping mun clean and praying at the local temple not suffice? Issue 2. I came across the media rumble discussion of Madhu Trehan and Arun Puri on 07/8/2018, so August 2018, where everyone is singing a different tune compared to their actions. Madhu often praised her brother for maintaining distance from the government of the time. Who is hoodwinked here, Madhu herself or subscribers or listeners?
So I'll answer this question, Perry. One is, in 2018, I don't think India Today was as insane as it is now. But whatever my view of India Today group, and this I'll just tell you because I am privy to these people and I've known them. Of course, she's Madhu's brother and, family is family. But on personal connections, because I have been in Delhi for 30 years longer in the news space, Pranoy Roy and Arun were very careful never to socialize with politicians. And I know this from my time back in the day. And that is something a lot of other editors and owners used to love doing. And many of them built their relevance. I don't want to take names, but
based on lunches,
they only want to party, be invited to dinner with. And on these two people I know personally. So maybe Madhu meant personally because organizationally, of course, it's disgraceful the way India Today conducts itself. But I do know 20 years ago, and I have no reason to believe that's changed. Unless absolutely necessary, Pranoy and Mr. Puri would not socialize with politicians. She's right on that. And sir, many people who we know only have got into journalism to do that.
Well, Vinod Mehta in his book though said that he would lunch and dine with the Congress and then he'd do a story against them the next day. So there's that also.
There are many anchors who, the one such who is part of Congress now, he started just interviewing the politicians. What is his name?
Who's part of Congress?
Anupama's husband. The one
Rajiv
News 24,
Shukla.
Rajiv Shukla.
Hmm.
Rajiv Shukla, he started his career just interviewing the politicians.
Correct.
That's it, nothing else.
Yeah.
And during those days when the TV wasn't so,
And he would give you a real
Everything.
slice of life in
Yeah.
politicians. Like,
Yeah.
we'll talk about everything other
Yeah.
than politics.
now he himself
He
has
was the
become a
beer
politician.
biceps of his
Yeah.
time.
He is Ravi Shankar Prasad's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Yes. Anupama was my classmate. So I know.
Hmm.
Yugraj says, thanks Anand for your recommendation last week. I read George Orwell's essay, A Hanging. It was very heartwarming to hear life in full flow being attributed to a person about to be killed via hanging. That's the empathy which is lacking in our world, and it is precisely this lack of empathy which is not nurtured or encouraged in our society which produces violent criminals. I think someone should interview Anand.
Okay, I'll interview Anand next time. Anand, next week there's an interview, you and me, 1 hour interview.
Okay, nobody has accused me of empathy, but
Right. So we have about 7 emails left. We'll read those next time because we're running out of time today. We've had a long hafta. And I want to also next hafta, hopefully, other than Delhi election, talk about the VC issue and the governors versus governments issue. But let's get the recommendations for the week. Let's go over it quickly because we're way over time this hafta. Manisha, you want to start?
So I want to recommend Basant's reports from Prayagraj. Please
Awesome,
watch
yeah.
the video on YouTube and please read the reports in English and Hindi. And please circulate these on your WhatsApp groups. Even if you're watching this for free and if you, for some reason, you're not subscribing, at least please spread the word on the reporting that we do. So please make the effort to go on the link, read it and share it on your WhatsApp groups. And there's a mini series that I recently watched called The Sympathizer, which is very interesting. It's on Geo. It's about a communist spy in South Vietnam who goes to America. Really fun with Robert Downey Jr. in it.
Raman sir?
No, I wanted to recommend Basant text story as well as the video story which we are releasing today, or maybe
Yeah, it should be out by the time
it should
this
be
hafta is out.
So definitely Basant's story on Kumbh, and he is working on another good story which you would see soon. And the second recommendation is Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who wrote Trump wants to show the world who is boss. So it's a psychological he psychological profile. I mean, of course, with the other elements, political and economic elements, beautifully written as usual, and he's done a pretty good job. I mean, you get a very good understanding of Trump. And third is today, if anybody who is interested to know the for and against view against 12 lakh, exemption to people who are earning 12 lakh or less. So there is a beautiful article today in Indian Express. There's which is for and against, and the for has been written by, I'll just tell you, Krishnamurthy Subramanian, and against is by Subhash Chandra Garg. So it gives you a very good perspective on the budget main attraction, which is 12 lakh rupees.
Right.
So, yes, so I just from the conversation itself about that democracy versus economic development. So I'm not very fond of comparing different countries, particularly any country with a country of a scale of India, but few thoughts that came compressed in like if post-colonial societies was part of that conversation, and the idea of overdeveloped state. So Hamza Alvi was a political theorist. He came up with this idea of overdeveloped state that post-colonial societies inherited from their colonial past. So the question is not of democracy, but who comes to boss over this overdeveloped state that the colonial power set here. And whoever is long in power here, 10 years, 15 years of whatever, gets to boss over this overdeveloped state and instill values. So it's a more of a so Hamza Alvi's essay on that is my recommendation. Also the idea of say managed anarchy. So most of these post-colonial societies became managed anarchy. So the state power is basically directed towards managing the anarchy. And also, a foreign service officer wrote in Nehru's time that our constitutional project is, of course, enforcing constitution, but it is also concealing continuities with the colonial state. So the idea of concealment of continuities in a new republic. So all these ideas basically are my recommendation to ponder over this question.
I shall definitely read them.
Right. I have 3 recommendations quickly. One of them is it's a newsletter on NPR, Why the AI World is Suddenly Obsessed with the 160-year-old Economics Paradox. The paradox is called Jevons Paradox. I recommend you read it. It's very interesting. The second is a podcast that was actually recommended to me by a subscriber, Dinesh Thakur, and I found it fascinating. And there were just so many, parallels to India. It's called Amicus, with Dahlia Lithwick, I think that's how you pronounce it. Trump's American takeover of justice courts and various institutions. It is fascinating. It is really well researched and it's great commentary. So I recommend this. And the final recommendation is the editorial by the Times of India called Thin Skin, Sealed Lips. Criminal defamation law injures free speech, as a Delhi court noted. SC should review the law. This appeared in the Times of India as their edit, where they were moralizing. So do read that, and I would also highly recommend you read that, because also open in front of me is a summon to Madhu, me, Manisha, dated 5/3/22 under Section 91 of the Criminal Procedure Code.
Me also?
Yeah, you were also summoned. We handled it legally. For NL cheat sheet, explained how to rig TRPs, as well as publication of highly defamatory and derogatory remarks. So I was summoned, Meghnad was summoned, Manisha, even our interns were summoned for criminal, under Section 95 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Because towering news personalities
okay, this is the Times case. Okay.
Times case. So, I highly recommend this editorial Times of India wrote on criminal defamation. But more importantly, maybe Times of India, get your other
sister concerns
to read this before you pelo gyan to others. ठीक है? तो थोड़ा कम ज्ञान पेला करो, पहले खुद पे लागू करो.
किसी ने केस किया होगा इनके. Again, that is why they came up with this.
बकवास.
I thought कुछ नया notice आ गया है.
अरे इतने notice है, I've lost count. I have a folder, legal. Income tax versus Newslaundry, India Today versus Newslaundry, Times of India versus Newslaundry, Sakal Times versus Newslaundry. So my folder, in fact, I'm running out of space on my laptop because of that. So I'll probably have to get a drive separately for that. But thank you, dear subscribers, our 13th anniversary. Now is when we get really combative. Right now we were just chilling, we were warming up. Now we get serious. So support us, the QR code will flash. Thank you for a wonderful producer, Priyali. Thank you, Anil, a wonderful sound recordist. Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, Raman sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We will leave you on this uplifting song because our birthday makes everything uplifting. Journalism at Newslaundry is powered by the public, because when the public pays, the public is served. Visit newslaundry.com/subscription and pick a payment plan of your choice. Pay to keep news free and independent. Your future, and indeed the future of democracy, depends on it.